It'll be April and her team, and they're just coming up to the table right now.
Wonderful. And since the recording just started, I'll mention again that the topic is the fee schedule updates for land use review and wetland habitat review. So we've heard a bit about this already, and we look forward to this work session on council.
Good morning. April 1st, Director of Community Development, and I'm going to pass it over to Chad Dragon, who will be leading the presentation, and then Brent Davis and I are here for any questions. Also, I believe I have Steve Archer in case there are any questions for legal.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Council. My name's Chad Dragon. I'm the Finance Manager in the Department of Community Development, and today we have some fee proposals updates for the Land Use Review and the Wetland and Habitat Review programs. Next slide, please. As you can see, the purpose of today is just simply to get the information out there as a beginning point, show you a little bit about, you know, the background on these fees, where they've been over the years, updates, talk a little bit about general fund support for the programs, which ties into these fees, as you will find out, and then ultimately give you a little, an update on kind of a summary on if the fees were adopted as proposed, what they would, what kind of revenue would be brought in additionally. So if you could forward that to the next slide. Thank you.
I have it right here too.
Oh, you do? Okay, that's easier. Thank you.
Yeah.
So a little bit about the cost recovery framework. It's both an RCW and Clark County Code Title VI. The RCW does allow us to charge reasonable fees from an applicant to cover the cost of processing these applications and to, you know, inspect and review plans, that kind of thing, all of the services provided by these programs for applicants. In Title VI, it also does say under the application and service fee policy that we are to adopt application and service fees at the level necessary to cover the cost of conducting the review or providing the service. So that's exactly what we're aiming for with these updates, is to get us up to that cost recovery level at some level anyway. And it also in Title VI identifies that general fund support for some key activities will be identified where necessary. Next slide, please. Just as a little bit of history, these programs have annually received general fund support in past years, and on the expenditure side of things, some of the main reasons for that are, number one, the fees simply haven't been updated in a number of years. And so what we're charging now for the various reviews and services really is reflective of costs of many years ago. And so the fee updates have been pretty sporadic over the years. That's one of the reasons why the general fund support has been there and has actually increased. Another reason is there actually has been some intentional subsidy of these program costs on, as far as the fees themselves, they have been subsidized with a portion of general fund support, and we like to call that public share, which is at some point along the line, it has been decided that for many reasons to make it more affordable for applicants, to make it the preferred method. We'd rather them go through our process than not, and so we have chosen to subsidize our fees in that way. There's also been an allocation of general fund dollars for non-fee supported activities, or activities that we don't currently charge fees for. And one of those things is customer service, just in general. We have what I believe is one full FTE dedicated to what's called Planner of the Day, and that is one of the planners who provides that kind of customer service to people who may call in, one-time applicants who may need a little bit of extra help getting through the process, that kind of thing. And another point I have is work in the Wetland and Habitat Program done by Clark Conservation District, which is an entity that works with landowners to to help them maintain exempt status and avoid violations of those codes in wetland and habitat. Next slide, please.
And just for clarification, I believe the subsidy that was originally done when the fees were done was the subsidy was approved or brought forward by the council or commission at the time. I don't know which one it was, but.
Okay, thank you. This slide really just contains a little bit more background info. These fees for both of the programs have not been updated significantly since probably around 2008 or 9. I think that's the last major fee update. There have been a couple of efforts over the years, but from what I've been able to see, they've really been some increases and some decreases, and so it's really been almost a net zero effect. And this today is really what we're trying to present is the first major fee update to get these fees up to a level where they're starting to cover our costs. And that last graphic there, that last paragraph, I should say, really just all it's saying is we're presenting the fees at or near 100% cost recovery, but adjustments can absolutely be made to those meeting somewhere in the middle where the programs will still get much needed revenue and decrease that general fund reliance, but also further any policy goals towards development that council may have. Next slide, please. What I'd like to show you here is this is simply the general fund support that each of these programs has received over the last 5 years, the 2019 through 2023 periods. In particular, land use review is trending or has been trending upward over the last several years. And wetland and habitat has stayed pretty steady, but it's just to give you an idea of the amount of dollars that are going into those programs. And, you know, which we can hopefully at some point decrease. Next slide, please. This slide here is simply a projection of where we think the general fund subsidy numbers will be at the end of this year for those programs. And so towards the bottom, you'll see, it's very, very hard to see, but we're projecting general fund subsidy that's slightly above what we asked for last year even. So it's creeping up a little bit again. And it's due to several reasons. The reasons I mentioned before, also just in general, I think development activity has been down a little bit this last year or two. And so, but we are projecting a slight increase over last year's numbers. Next slide.
And the increase in wages.
Yes, of course. Yeah, staffing is, or personnel costs, salaries and benefits are really the main chunk of these services, because that's the staff are the ones who are reviewing these things, applications, and that is the major component of the fee, each fee. This next slide here simply shows if we were to adopt the fees as proposed, the kind of revenue additionally that would be brought in for each of those programs. And I can tell you that for each of those programs, those figures are pretty close to double what's being brought in now. So, you know, it's definitely the case that since the fees haven't been adjusted in so long, that our proposed fees are much higher than what we're currently charging through Title VI. Next slide, please. And finally, we just have next steps. And so this is really the very first step, this work session, in trying to get the calculations and the information that we've done out there to talk about, to get guidance on, and then we would like to maybe consult with Development Engineering Advisory Board, get their feedback as well, and then come back to council with all proposed changes to hopefully finalize something and get an ordinance passed and get these fees implemented.
Or somewhere around these fees. where the council wants the, do we want to be subsidizing at 15%, which I think was the original intent, when they were put into place, which is now 50%, and anywhere in between that the council, more too, just so the council is aware that we are using 1.6, or really 1.7 million dollars of the general fund for development fees.
And that is the end of my presentation now. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments from council,
Yes, Chair.
please.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. This one gives me a little bit of heartache. So my first question would be, how much would the bottom line be per permit on this? And is everybody subject to the land use review, or only certain properties? And then I assume that the wetland is only certain properties.
Oh, yeah, I'll take that one if you don't mind. Yeah, so it is only when they are developing and that land use or wetland habitat review is required. So our wetland habitat reviews right now are generated out of GIS, which is what tells us whether that property needs to go through a wetland habitat review of any sort. And then, yes, you would only incur the land use fees if you were developing land. And like certain things came out of that with the housing option study. So you used to have a land use review to get an ADU. That's been removed. You don't have to do that anymore. So, but for the most part, yes, if you were going to be developing land or subdividing land or splitting land or making a new neighborhood, all those things would be your land use review. But you wouldn't be charged that if you weren't doing.
Okay.
You weren't doing those things.
And then I was curious, so how much are those fees now? I mean, I imagine they probably vary per permit, but how much are they now and how much will they be increasing?
About 50% of an increase, average. Right?
Yeah, well, I think the averages actually are quite a bit higher. So if we were to take the current fees in Title VI and we were to take the fees that we've just calculated at current costs, in land use review, the increase is on average, it's going to be 87%. And that is, again, that's 100% cost recovery, which I'm not sure if the programs have ever seen. They've always been subsidized at some point or to some level. In wetland and habitat review, it's probably a little bit over 100%, simply because they just have not been updated in so long. And, costs rise every year, personnel costs rise, and these are the calculations that we've made. That's what they show.
Do you have the dollar amount?
Yeah.
Like what it is by a dollar amount?
We do have it by fee, and we can certainly provide that, email it to you. The spreadsheet is ready, so.
Yeah, I would be interested in that information. And then, just my thought process on this is, we're looking at the comp plan update. We're supposed to be completing that next year. And it looks like there will be very little, if any, expansion to the urban growth boundary, which means we're going to have the same land inventory essentially that we have now. And, areas specific with wetland and other, geographical restrictions, construction is like water, it takes the path of least resistance. And so we've had this inventory now for a number of years, and we've been whittling away at it, and the easiest lots have been being developed. And, with the comp plan, we have a percentage of those wetlands being converted as a condition to fitting enough people here, to fitting all the people here. So those lands do have to convert, otherwise we will have a housing shortage. So as the inventory changes, becomes more difficult, more restrictive, and then now we're looking at increasing the fee levels for those, I'm concerned about the impact that will be in chilling the development of these properties. I particularly don't want to develop properties that have wetlands, period. But if we include that as a part of the housing that's going to be built as part of the comp plan, then it has to convert, or we have a shortage. So I'm just concerned with that extra burden that's being put on by fees, but on top of that, just by the fact that they are day by day becoming more and more difficult to develop.
So we did plug the spreadsheet.
Yes, and there's a tab for each of the programs that says something like with 2.5% technology fee. Think that the blue and green ones.
This is the blue one.
Okay, so if you were to go to the very top, there should be a column that says Title VI fee, like column C or, oh, it's column E, okay. And so column E would be what we're charging now in the land use review program for each of those fee types. And if you were to go, and I apologize for the messy spreadsheet, column H is really what we're proposing. So columns E and H. H is the new fee, E is the current fee.
E.
And how is H derived?
Well, the most basic explanation I can give is we developed an hourly rate for each of the programs that is all inclusive. It's the staff time, it's the management review time, it's the support time, it's overhead for the programs, both at the county level and the department level. It's taking all those things into consideration, packaging it into an hourly rate, and then for each of those fees, we know about how long they take, like how many hours to perform the service. So we multiply the hourly rate times the number of hours it takes for each of those fees, and then we get the updated fee, which is in column H. And I will note that we have also added a technology surcharge because we feel that it's best to have the additional funds available in the fund for technology upgrades because, you know, a permitting system is such an important part of our operations. So there are always going to be costs related to technology, and we build that into our proposed fees so that we'll have the money when it comes time to upgrade or to improve.
And these were reviewed by the finance team or Mark Hathaway?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, our methodology was reviewed by the finance team, and they agreed and approved of it.
Okay,
And
so
we
if
have
they were
year
thinking,
Hey, Chancellor Young.
thank you. I appreciate this, but I would like to have this, you know, converted to a format that we can relate to. So how much does this add to the price of a house, generally speaking? I know that that's going to vary depending on how big the parcel is, it's being divided, all that thing, but just some way of creating, you know, the ability for us to see what kind of impact this is going to have. And then I also had a question. I don't know if it's a good idea, but is it possible to spread the burden among all building permits? So if there's a wetland on the property, essentially you're splitting that, you know, the cost to work with all the properties that have wetlands and spread it across the whole spectrum of permits. I'd be interested in seeing if that was possible and how much that would lessen the burden and how much it would increase the burden on properties that don't actually have a wetland.
I'd have to defer that question to Steve Archer, because I think that's more of a legal question of whether we would be allowed to do that. The last question.
And then the actual impact, Counselor, are you thinking about like taking the two columns and then just add another column that one subtracts the other so you see the dollar amount increase? Does the amount change based on the size, or just a flat fee based on code?
Well, there's so many fees. So it could be a boundary land adjustment to a CUP with a hearings examiner. So it won't always affect homes. It could affect businesses. And so we could easily do a column of what our fees are today, what 100% cost recovery would be, and then what that difference is. But I don't know if they all would affect a homeowner.
Right, and that's what this spreadsheet right here is actually showing. It would just be another column that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we,
Subtract column.
this is Brent Davis, the Land Use and Wetland Habitat Review Manager. I think we could probably put together some case studies. I think we could, first of all, create a version of this table that doesn't have all the other information in it, that just focuses on the changes in the amounts, gives a percentage for each individual fee. And again, those fees are based on our estimates of the average amount of time it takes to provide those services. And some of those services are additive and multiple may apply to an individual project. But we can do a typical single-family home construction. We could probably do a typical short plat, a typical subdivision that has, wetland and habitat issues on it, and show how the land use fees would change and show how the wetland and habitat fees would change, and to provide some examples.
Yeah, that would be great.
Was it a policy decision a while back to have 85% cost recovery instead of a different number?
Yeah, that, I was, here, I was a staff biologist in 2009 when the last major fee update was done on these fees, and that was the goal that was set by the council or commission at that time, was an 85% cost recovery.
Then, given that, Kathleen, would it be appropriate for there to be 3 columns, the Title VI fees, the 100%, and then the 85% cost recovery?
We can certainly do that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Steve Archer, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney for Clark County, and I wanted to circle back to the question raised by Councilor Young, and I'd like to see if I understand the question completely. Was it that the idea that permit fees could be raised for applications that are unrelated to processing of wetland or habitat in order to subsidize the costs incurred by the county to review the wetlands? In other words, to spread those costs? Is that the question, Counselor?
Yeah, that is. But, it may not even be something I'm interested in looking in once we get those, case scenarios. Because right now, I really don't have a firm grasp of how big of a burden this is going to bring on properties with those. But yes, that is precisely what I was asking.
So would you like me to defer an answer at this time? I wouldn't be able to give you a definitive answer, but I would say that it definitely implicates RCW 8202-020, and I would, as to whether it's a lot permissible, I'll defer that until a later answer and at your request.
Sounds good.
Questions from council?
Yes, thank you. I guess I see this as a reoccurring thing, the sporadic increase in fees, and I'd like to see a systematic. I mean, if it's 85% cost recovery, come back sooner when that starts going askew. But I think and I wonder what the cost recovery was before the 2009 decision to have it at 85, or were we going for 100% at that time, cost recovery, or?
I don't believe so. The 2009 fee update came about partially because of a substantial deficit in community development's budget. That's my recollection, because of the economic slowdown that occurred in 2008.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And I do plan on putting a system in place so you'll see the fees every year, so you can decide every year, council can, of whether they want to continue to subsidize and what that subsidize looks like, and which scenario, you know, do they want to be at 15 or 50 or?
Great, because it becomes harder and harder, the longer the delay is and the greater the difference is in those. So if we could institute some systemic change to make that happen, that would be helpful and make these decisions less painful.
The work for us is harder too, to have when you go 10 years or 20
Yes,
years.
yeah. And I think, you know, just looking at, you know, like especially with wetlands, that some of these projects, I understand it's hourly, you figure out the hourly, because some are very complicated. And, you know, especially with wetlands, and if there's, if something is contested, I could just see a lot of back and forth with an applicant. So some of these can get very expensive. Let's see, what else did I have? Oh, and so it looks like as what you are recommending here, we would be about, I think, we'd still be, I think, at 225,000 shortfall. So maybe that is around 15%, which it would be for next, well, for this year, it would be for this year, as I figured it.
There are aspects of our work that are not fee supportable.
Right.
And that's what that difference reflects. There are those services that we provide that we do not charge a fee for, and we cannot subsidize with the fees that we do charge. So our customer service work, as Chad indicated, the duty rotates on a daily basis, but we essentially dedicate a full FTE planner to providing customer service. That's pretty much all they can get done on the days that they're on duty.
I totally support that. I think that's a very good service for someone who just has a quick question, hasn't been through the process. I've used it in the past. It's really helpful. And so there was an exception made for the land use review for ADUs, and I think there could be potentially other exceptions if we wanted to make them for, like, encouraging any particular kind of development, like more affordable housing or apartment complex, whatever, that may or may not be part of this decision, but going forward, we could make those decisions if we wanted to encourage certain development.
Certainly, you could choose to subsidize individual fees to different extents or for specific types of projects. That's certainly within the realm of possibility.
Okay.
The ADU was state mandated, but yes.
Oh, that was state mandated. Okay, but we could look at that locally if we choose to.
Yep.
And I don't think that if all we had left within the growth boundary were wetlands, we'd extend the growth boundary. That would happen, and I think everyone would support that. And there's still opportunities, you know, year to year to expand the growth boundary as, you know, development ebbs and flows. So I don't see all of the wetlands being filled if we have a tight boundary. That might be all of the questions that I have. Oh, just a couple of thoughts related to the other programs that you support, like the Conservation District. I know we had talked about the Voluntary Stewardship Program at one time. I don't know, it sounds complicated to implement that, but then for the Conservation District, there's also rates and charges. So there could be other sources to support that could free up some funds for your programs.
Well, if the council will recall, the current level of support we provide to the Conservation District is $20,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm all for that. I'm just, so it's not a lot of money, is I guess the point.
Yes.
But there could be other sources to, for them and to alleviate that. That might be all that I have. Thanks for bringing this forward.
Absolutely.
And staff, would you illuminate for us where we go from here on the fees?
Yes, so where we go from here is, do we need to also consult DEEP?
I think that we
Recommend.
need to bring it to DEEP once we get a recommendation from you about how to go forward. So from what I understand, we create another spreadsheet and have a scenario of what 15% of subsidy looks like. And we can represent that at another work session. And in that meantime, we can propose it to DEEP as well.
I'd like to hear the feedback from DEEP at a work session if that timing works out.
Yes, we would go to DEEP first, then we'll come to the work session with the
Revised.
worksheet. Yep, that gives you really only what you want to see. Fees with some scenarios also of what that would look like for a plat or some scenarios of what it would look like to develop land, what the impact would be to the applicant.
And what is the approximate timing for when it comes back to council after being at DEEP?
We'll probably try to get one, bless you. We'll probably try to get one, DEEP's monthly, so right after, whichever one we can get into. I know we have budget happening in that same time, because it will be November, because DEEP just met, so they won't meet again until October. And so it'll be when I can get in November or December to a work session.
Very good. Well, thank you.
It won't take us long.
Chair.
Are there any other questions or comments from council?
Yes, I have one last quick question. I was curious about the technology fee. Is that related only to wetland technology, or is that just a general thing, and is that being applied to all permits around the table or just a specific category?
Currently to my knowledge, the fees that stand in all programs in community development, whether it's, the building permits or these programs, we don't have a technology fee with those, packaged with those. But our goal is to, as I review the fees for each program, and these are the first ones, we would like to implement that technology fee to help pay for and offset future technology costs in order to have the funds available.
And current technology costs.
Yeah, and current.
We have yearly costs for the land management system and the e-plan system that are not in the fees. So that's one of the $200,000.
Yes, I was just curious how that process, because I do agree with putting that in there. That is a cost of doing business. So, yeah, thank you.
And very common in other jurisdictions.
Yes. Pierce County, Snohomish County, they all charge or package technology fees into their regular fees.
And the applicants benefit from that technology as well. So, yeah.
Yes. Anything else that staff that you would care to add? Any concluding remarks? I'll just say thank you very much for this presentation. We know that it is quite complex, and we look forward to hearing the remainder of the projections. So come November or whenever, we will be looking for that on our agendas. Anything else, council? And hearing nothing, we thank you for this, and the work session has concluded. We will see everyone who wishes to join us at 1 o'clock for council time back online. Have a good lunch. Bye-bye.
Bye.